I heard that Carroll O'Connor was difficult and did not want to go along with a lot of the stuff you were shaping his character into. Is that true?
Yeah, very true.
Was he the kind of person where his politics weren't the same as Archie's politics, or did he say, I don't want to be seen as a buffoon or this kind of guy or possibly racist, or what was his beef?
It was an intellectual thing. I mean, he knew he cared about playing Archie. He loved it. He knew what we were doing. You know, we never received a piece of mail from anybody that said right on Archie that didn't say something like, but you horses' asses, or go back where you fucking came from, or something like that.
Right.
They were always angry letters that still said right on Archie, but they got the point. Carroll loved the point. He was an Irish Dublin acting intellectual, and he disagreed with the scripts from an intellectual basis that was altogether wrong often. And I also think he was he was carrying a lot of weight, not because of the nature of the character, but the degree of stardom. And
he looked at himself as more of a character actor who wanted to practice his craft, but not have to be on the cover of TV Guide every other week, right? Maybe that was too much pressure for him?
I think it's exactly right. But when it was so fascinating because he would, after a reasonable or unreasonable amount of argument and so forth. Now, by the way, he was often right. I mean, we made a lot of changes that made a better script of a lot of things. But when he was wrong and we held our ground, there would come a time when it was too late. We had to get on with rehearsal or the show wasn't going to be done. And then he would slip mystically into the character.
Right.
And then none of us could write the dialogue. The ideas for the dialogue were, but we couldn't write the actual dialogue as well as they would just pour out of him.
Well, that guy, what he could convey, once you knew the character, when, Edith would say, the new neighbor's coming over to visit, and he'd open the door and there'd be a black guy standing there, and you'd just see that look on his face, or just even when somebody sat in his chair instead of him. Like, these moments that you wouldn't think, if you're sitting there describing comedy where you go, well, he has his chair. That's the chair he likes to sit in. And then sometimes a guest would come over, Sammy Davis Jr. would come over, and he would sit in his chair. If someone was describing it to you, you'd go, that sounds all right. That doesn't sound like no one's winning a Peabody for this idea. But when he'd come out of the kitchen and someone would be sitting in his chair, what he could do with that moment, he could make a complete meal out of what wasn't, just a thought. Not even, oh, this is a hysterical idea. It's like, but would he ring it out.
Well, that chair came from my father's red leather chair. It was a red leather chair with an ottoman, from which he controlled the radio, not television. This was radio. But nobody else could touch that dial when he was in the room, but my dad.
Is there, shouldn't everything just be done that way? Like, your dad had his chair. That was the inspiration for Archie and his sort of brown, tattered, his chair wasn't leather, but either way, your dad having a chair is such a great organic thought and idea. Archie should have his chair.
I agree.
As well. And why not just basically approach your creative life that way? Just draw it from your experience and what you know.
That's what we were doing on all the shows. We were all paying a lot of attention to our wives, our kids, our neighbors, and the culture. How were we impacted by what was going on, whether it's the government or the economy or members of our own family? And we would come in gushing with the things that were occurring in our lives. And that's where, my favorite expression for describing that, we were all scraping the barrel of our own experience and sharing it.
When you say that Carroll O'Connor was intellectually sort of disapproved of some of the scripts and things. What does that mean exactly?
Well, take a specific show. You like the way his expression when he walked into somebody sitting in his chair and so forth. You can feel that, see that. He was one script called on him to be in an elevator for the entire half hour. The elevator gets stuck. There's a black guy in the elevator, and there is a Hispanic couple in the elevator, and she's pregnant.
Yes.
I wanted to see the baby. I'm not going to have a camera on a berth in an elevator, but I wanted to see the baby born on that floor of the elevator with the camera on Archie's face.
Right.
And he couldn't handle it. And that was clearly the longest argument. We went into rehearsal the latest moment on that particular episode because he couldn't see 5 people in an elevator and a baby born. But it even felt, I don't know, it seemed to feel dirty to him, a birth in an elevator. But the camera was on his face, and his face revealing it with the sound of that first, infant cry was as beautiful as anything I've ever seen.
Yeah, he had thankfully he had a lot of face, and he could do a lot of things with it. I mean, just when Edith would tell him that the dinner was late or something. He was so great because he had a way of interacting with Edith, and then a way of interacting with Gloria, and a way of interacting with Mike, and a way of interacting with the neighbor. Like, he had different modes for everybody, but they were all super funny.
You're talking about something the fates or the gods are responsible for. I cast those roles. But what you're talking about, their ability to interact and work off each other in every single direction, that was from the gods. Nobody could guess that would be so rich.
Well, speaking of the gods, like the Jean Stapleton voice, even her character being so shrill and up there, was that a character that she did before? Is that something that she was messing around with? Did it seem a little out there for a very reality-based, grounded sitcom at the time?
It didn't seem the least bit out there to me. I mean, she was Edith, and this was entirely Jean. I didn't suggest she go into that register. It's the way Carroll took on Archie. They just appeared through them. When Edith was Edith, I knew I had Edith, but it was she who brought all of that to it.
Yeah, it was. I guess it's just one of those sort of stars aligning kind of thing.
I'm reminded of something I haven't thought about in the longest time. She asked me once, a very early show, she said, all right, he's carrying on like that, showing impatience and bigotry about something. And what am I doing? What am I thinking when he's... And I said, you're Maxine Andrews, Patty Andrews. You're the middle...
You're the middle Andrews sister?
You're the middle Andrews sister. And you're singing Under the Apple Tree.
The thing that always drives me nuts is in a world where I've attempted to make a few sitcoms, it's always done by committee, and everyone tells you this person can't say that. And I'm like, let the person say the bigoted comment and let them say the hurtful thing, and then have the people around them to say you're wrong or be shocked by it or react to it, but let the person say the thing. It's like saying, we're going to do a Western, everyone's going to wear a white hat, and everyone's going to be a great sheriff. And it's like, no, we need the Dalton boys rolling into town. And somebody goes, yeah, but we don't like the Dalton boys. And you go, Right. And you go, but we disagree with the Dalton boys robbing the bank. I know. That's when the sheriff comes in. But we need that guy. And then everyone goes, but wouldn't it be a happier town? And wouldn't this be a better Western if everyone was just a good sheriff? And it's like, you don't get what's bringing out the good in the sheriff. And it was great having him say all those horrible things and then everybody around him shaking their head at what he was saying.
It's the way this show works, Norman, is the one guy says the racist
I say the
thing,
horrible,
bigoted
things.
Everyone reacts around him.